beautiful continent of Africa is blessed with an abundance of natural resources, raw materials, precious metal, and fertile soil. However, most African countries are facing a lot of problems recently. Many of the world's poorest nations are in Africa, and some of these countries are frequently at war with either terrorist insurgencies or one another, which puts further strain on their economies. Despite these challenges, Africa's 54 countries include some of the fastest growing economies in the world. Powered by its agriculture, trade and natural gas sectors, the African economy is expected to reach a GDP of $29 trillion by 2050, playing a major role in the global economy. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the top 10 richest countries in Africa. If you are new here, welcome. Be sure to press the like button whenever you watch any of our videos, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on future educative and informative videos regarding the interesting continent of Africa. With that out of the way, let's begin. 10. Tanzania. GDP $69 billion. On the number 10th position in this list, we have Tanzania, a country known as the home of some of the continent's most famous national parks, and of course, Mount Kilimanjaro, which is the tallest mountain in Africa. Tanzania's economy is largely based on agriculture, contributing almost 25% of its total GDP. Other components of its economy includes mining, manufacturing, construction, electricity, natural gas and water supply. Its main exports include gold, coffee, cashew nuts and cotton. Tanzania has achieved a relatively high economic growth in recent years, with a 5.6% growth rate. But this growth seems to be slowing down. Despite massive economic growth in recent years, the absolute number of people living in poverty has remained the same. 9. Angola. GDP $70.3 billion. The country of Angola has one of the biggest reserves of raw materials in Africa. Essentially, it could be higher up on this list. However, due to resource mismanagement and internal corruption, the economy of the country has been negatively affected. Angola's economy is built on oil, with large reserves of natural gas and oil, making up over one-third of its $70 billion GDP. The production and export of crude oil also contributes significantly to its foreign exchange. In fact, 90% of the nation's revenue in the export sector comes from the sale of crude oil. Other worthy exports include diamonds and cargo ships. Agriculture is also expected to become an important sector for the economy going forward. Since the end of the Angolan Civil War in 2002, positive steps have been taken striving towards economic advancement and stability. There has been work on both political and structural reforms alongside the IMF and the World Bank. Since then, the country has experienced one of the fastest growing economies in the world and has become one of the richest countries in Africa. 8. Ghana. GDP $75 billion. Ghana is one of Africa's dark horses in terms of economies and has quietly solidified its efforts in growing its GDP from $67 billion to $75 billion in 2021. Ghana is a West African country who has an economy that is both diverse and rich in resources. The nation has attracted foreign investments due to its overall business environment, which has experienced economic growth of just over 6% in the last 2 years. Services contributes to around 50% of the Ghanaian GDP and employ almost 30% of the workforce. Industry is the next biggest contributor to GDP at just under 25%, followed by agriculture. Ghana is also blessed with an abundance of natural resources, helping to trigger an economic boom. Gold is the country's main export, followed by petroleum, and together, they make up 50% of the country's foreign exchange. Other major exports include cocoa beans, timber, and gold. 7. Ethiopia. GDP $92 billion. Found in the Horn of Africa, the landlocked country of Ethiopia is the 7th richest country in Africa. With archaeological findings dating back to over 3 million years, this ancient land is famous for being the place where the coffee bean first originated. The nation is the highest coffee and honey producer in Africa, making up a large portion of the country's foreign exchange. Other exports include legumes, oily seeds, and cut flowers. Ethiopia's GDP of more than $90 billion comprises agriculture, construction, manufacturing, tourism, food processing, resources, and energy. Agriculture is the region's most promising resource, making up over 40% of the GDP, 60% of exports, and more than 80% of total employment. Ethiopia's economic growth has averaged 9.9% year-on-year for 10 years since 2008. This stable annual growth, something that few African countries have managed, has begun to attract foreign investment. In 2018, The government launched an ambitious economic reform to open up the economy even further and spearhead transformation. The country's poverty level fell to 31% by 2015, and it tends to be a middle-income economy by 2025. 6. Kenya. GDP $109 billion. Kenya, an East African country well known for its vast landscape and wildlife, is next on Africa's richest countries list, with a GDP of over $100 billion. They have established a stream of endless revenue from the agricultural sector, as well as a few other sectors. Although the Kenyan economy is not built around natural resources like oil or gold, they are still one of the richest African countries with a diversified revenue stream. Today, Kenya is one of the fastest growing sub-Saharan nations, with the agricultural sector handling a whopping 35% of its total GDP. Their main agricultural products are coffee, maize, tea, among others. 5. Morocco. GDP $126 billion. With a GDP of almost $130 billion, Morocco comes in at number 5 on this list. The economy of this North African country is versatile and stable, experiencing growth in a number of industries over the last decade. This makes Morocco the second richest non-oil producing African country. The country's economy is driven by mining and manufacturing. 30% of Morocco's GDP comes from industry, 15% from agriculture, and 55% from services. This is supplemented by a growing tourism sector, with locals being welcoming of tourists, and the government placing a strong emphasis on attracting tourists to the country. Morocco relies heavily on its agriculture and is the third largest producer of phosphorus in the world. The country has benefited greatly from its diversified exports, not limited to electrical equipment, vehicles, and vehicle parts. Additionally, the telecom and textile industries bring a lot to the economy. However, Morocco has experienced stunted economic growth owing to internal problems, with real GDP growth of only 2.7% in 2021. 4. Algeria. GDP $163 billion. Algeria is a North African country which is the largest in terms of land area in the whole African continent. Boasting a significant economy and available infrastructure and a GDP of over $160 billion, the country achieved a notable achievement of reducing poverty by 20% within the last 20 years. Crude oil reserves are abundant in this developing Saharan country, and the economy is heavily reliant on it. So much so that oil and natural gas make up almost 70% of its total income. The recent discovery of more crude oil reserves have boosted this rapidly growing industrial country. Other sectors that make up the Algerian economy include agriculture, industrial works, commercial services, and construction. The country is also one of the largest suppliers of ammonia in Africa. However, it's worth noting that the recent depression and instability in oil prices has resulted in a decline in the country's currency reserves. In addition, political uncertainty and scandals in the hydrocarbon industry have caused a dip in Algeria's economic growth. 3. Egypt. GDP $396 billion. This ancient country from northern Africa has held the title of the richest country in Africa for many years. However, the economy suffered severely and foreign exchange reserves tumbled following the 2011 revolution during the Arab uprising. With the most recent GDP of just under $400 billion, Egypt now holds the third spot on this list. Economic activities have improved and stabilized in this country over the last decade, and Egypt is currently experiencing a positive economic growth. The real GDP growth reached 5.8% in 2020 from 5.6% in 2019. The country has also seen unemployment levels fall and improvement in foreign exchange reserves, higher export of goods and services, and a bolstered tourism sector, all contributing to its development. The leading factors of the Egyptian economy include petroleum and natural gas exports, tourism, wholesale and retail trade, construction and real estate. The state has diversified its economy away from just raw material exports in recent years, and over half of the GDP now comes from service-based employment. However, Egypt could face some socio-economic issues due to a large percent of people living below the poverty line, unemployment, a weak healthcare system, and a global slowdown. 2. South Africa. GDP $415 billion. This southern country in Africa is another significant player on the continent as the second richest country in Africa. With a highly developed economy, advanced infrastructure, and a GDP of over $400 billion, the country is considered one of the fastest developing countries in the world. Often referred to as the Rainbow Nation, South Africa is one of the few countries on this list that are not reliant on a single source of revenue. The country has a good mix of mining, manufacturing, financial services, and tourism. It's also abundant in natural resources and raw material exports like gold, diamonds, platinum, coal, and iron ore. South Africa is also world renowned as a major tourist destination and places a lot of emphasis on tourism as part of its economy. However, political and global turmoil have hindered its ability to meet its full potential. The country was faced with a recession after experiencing consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth rates, and development has slowed, growing its GDP by only 0.2% in 2020. South Africa also has the highest rates of inequality in the world. 1. Nigeria. GDP $480 billion. This West African country, with a population of over 200 million citizens, makes up an essential part of the African economy. With a GDP just over $480 billion, Nigeria holds the title of the richest country in Africa. This insane GDP is mainly driven by finance, transport, infrastructure, tourism, and an abundance of crude oil. The country records around 1.6 million barrels of crude oil a day, making it the largest exporter of crude oil in Africa. These petroleum exports make up 10% of the total GDP and over 80% of the export sector revenue. In addition to petroleum, Nigeria has an abundance of raw materials and natural resources like coal, limestone, zinc, lead, tin, natural gas, niobium, and iron ore. There is also sufficient fertile land for agriculture, which is responsible for over 20% of the GDP. The large population of Nigeria have helped to propel Nigeria as the largest consumer retailer in Africa, and the digitally aware residents have contributed to the country's fast-growing tech sector. Nigeria has also placed a strong emphasis on protecting its natural resources, trying to move away from its large reliance on oil refineries and processing plants. Known for its vibrant cultural heritage, different ethnicities, natural splendor, and large population, Nigeria remains the number one producer in terms of GDP output on the continent and Africa's wealthiest country. So there you have it, viewers, the top 10 richest countries in Africa. Which of these countries' growth impresses you the most? Don't hesitate to share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Also, don't forget to press the like button and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future educative and informative videos regarding the interesting continent of Africa. Thanks for watching this one. Catch you in the next.